Hi everyone, it's John. I wanted to come to you with a review today of a book I'm very much late to the party for. In fact, more than 2 decades late. And it's a book that I absolutely loved, but read last December, and am only now getting a chance to actually put the review up on my channel. And it's a book I'm sure everyone has heard of. Everyone who is, at least reads nonfiction, I guess. Maybe a decreasing community on BookTube, but it's Adam Hochschild's King Leopold's Ghost, a story of greed, terror, and heroism in colonial Africa. And I do want to warn anyone who happens to pick up the book, there are some very disturbing pictures in it. If I remember correctly, I'm not going to show them because I don't want anyone to retch while they watch the video. But I remember seeing pictures of amputated body parts. In I think one of the pictures, and if it's not in the book, it's easily found online if you just Google King Leopold and the Congo atrocities, the whole host of Congo atrocities that he oversaw firsthand. I want to open my review with a quote that King Leopold II wrote in a letter to one of his aides, right as he was beginning to start thinking about this thing that he would call the Congo Free State. I do not want to risk losing a fine chance to secure for ourselves, that would be the Belgian people, or more specifically him, to lose for ourselves a slice of this magnificent African cake. Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness seems to be a bit of a teenage rite of passage these days. Not only does it show with such clarity and insidious madness the psychological state of Kurtz, but it also shows you how ugly colonialism truly can be, and that slavery was still very much alive and well in some parts of the world even 2 generations after it had been officially eradicated in the United States. Indeed, it's still around, but not officially sanctioned, at least in Europe or the United States these days. If your education was anything like mine, what your senior high school English teacher knew about Belgium's King Leopold II could have fit into a thimble. But King Leopold's Ghost, I don't know why I keep stumbling over it, King Leopold's Ghost, first published in 1998, stands as a really wonderful corrective, historical corrective, for what many people don't know about the history of the Congo Free State. And I was really happy to see that people thought its importance was so great that it actually became, as the cover says, a National Book Critics Circle Award finalist, and I think it was a New York Times bestseller when it first came out. So as for the actual history that the book relates, in 1876, Leopold II called together a prominent group of scientists, explorers, and missionaries in Brussels to discuss the quote-unquote, what would eventually be called the Scramble for Africa. Among the attendees was Henry Morton Stanley, who still remains best known for stumbling across David Livingstone 5 years earlier. And from 1879 to 1884, Stanley actively explored and mapped out these territories that Leopold was interested in, that he really had his eye on, what he would go out to carve out as the Congo. He wrote treaties, Stanley did, on local tribe leaders, in which they unknowingly gave away their governing autonomy and natural resources. When world leaders gathered at the Berlin Conference of 1885 to apportion Africa into pieces like the meat of a dead animal, Leopold emerged with the lion's share of that meat, an enormous 900,000 square mile tract of land in the modern day Congo and the Central African Republic, which was to be called the Congo Free State. Under the guise of running a scientific and philanthropic enterprise, Leopold went out to systematically convince European leaders that he alone, not the Kingdom of Belgium, but he alone, personally, should run the territory. And they let him. Leopold used the Congo Free State to accrue his own personal fortune, mostly through the systematic harvesting of ivory and rubber. Rubber plants take time to grow and produce the sap from which the rubber is made, but Leopold and his officers running the territory in his stead did not have the patience. Natives who didn't harvest enough had their right hands cut off as punishment. And like I said earlier, before anyone happens to pick up the book, I wanted to say it right at the top. There is a heartbreaking book included in the picture of a father seated, shackled in manacles, looking down helplessly at the cut-off foot and hand of one of his young daughters. But Hochschild's book doesn't just enumerate the countless human rights abuses committed under Leopold's rule. It also tells the redemptive story of a people who risked their careers, not a people, but the people, individuals, not a country, of the people who risked their careers and lives in order to expose what Leopold was doing here. George Washington Williams, the African-American Baptist minister and journalist who was initially interested in Leopold's plans to form the Congo Free State and have free reign over it. And when he actually visited the Congo for himself and saw the atrocities that were going on there with his own eyes, the open letter that he wrote to the king served as a sort of international call to action to end Leopold's project in imperialism in the Congo. Williams's early death from tuberculosis at the age of 41 made it a pretty temporary roadblock in progress. One day, a shipping official by the name of E.D. Morel noticed that ships were being sent off to the Congo with only two things on board: men and gun ammunition. No provisions, no food, nothing like that, just men and ammunition. And were returning with tons of rubber and other materials. He quickly discovered that Leopold was lying about everything that was going on. He resigned from his position and started a weekly magazine where he published everything he could discover about the horrors that were going on. It was only after Morel's contributions that the Congo started to get more attention in the public eye, including the help of Roger Casement, who is perhaps the journalist most famous and associated with the case of the Congo Free State. In 1904, Casement put together the Casement Report, which was the dossier of information that finally forced Leopold to relinquish personal control of the land and to hand it over not to himself but to Belgian Parliament. The Congo Free State was officially disbanded 4 years later, and it then became part of the Belgian Congo, which was still very much a project in imperialism, and remained a part of the Belgian Congo for more than another half century, until 1960, when the Congo became independent. For an entire week after Leopold was forced to turn over his personal territory to the Belgian government, his furnaces ran white hot as scads of his palace consiglieres helped to destroy the evidence of what he had done. "I will give them my Congo," Leopold reportedly said, "but they have no right to know what I did there." Hochschild's book, though largely a compilation of other secondary source material that's been published in other places, but never consolidated into a single source as far as I know, at least not a popularly available one like this. The book stands as a really wonderful, in the really wonderful, long, dignified tradition of reporters, writers, columnists, journalists standing up and speaking truth to power when it most needs to be spoken. So it is has a bit of age on it, but as far as I know, it is includes all of the information that we knew when it was written. I don't think there are breakthroughs every year about what was going on in the Congo, but I could be wrong. I'm no scholar on it, obviously. So Adam Hochschild, King Leopold's Ghost, a century of greed, terror, and heroism in colonial Africa. I will see everyone next week.